Beneath the weight of humanity lies a roiling black psychic sea, filled with all of humanity's wants, needs, desires, emotions, and fears. And it is in these fears that a tempest is born, taking everything, everyone with it, into its waves, into its drowning swells and flesh-tearing winds. Those free of the tempest aren't free, but simply brought under its eye. Hi, hello, and welcome back to CAIN, the game where you play a psychic exorcist hunting down the stain of humanity's sins. And today we're covering the last sin in the core book, Lord. Using another tabletop system analogy, this is the layer action sin. Taking that ability that other sins have to passively, alter the environment other than just their palace, the Lord takes that in stride and is purposeful about it. It doesn't just affect people, it doesn't just affect objects. Due to its wake or its domains, it is making an entire alternate reality that is feeding off the people. But the Lord doesn't take people like the others. It's not the sycophantic swarms of cultists under the idol. It's not the treasures and little trinkets that a toad is stealing. The obstacle in a hound's path, fuel of hate and bodies for the centipede, or even the wandering husks that rot and steal heat and life. No, the Lord wishes to shape them, to take them, to make them something appealing to the host and to themselves. To make them something right and perfect. Because that's the goal of the Lord, that's the goal of its realm, is to make perfection. Not some kind of glory to elevate itself, but for its host. It's doing this for its host. It's making something that's just, that's right, that's perfected, that doesn't have all the flaws and terrible, terrible things that have happened to the host. Because the Lord is born of fear, and it seeks to avoid that at all costs. It wishes for their host to be coddled, to be comforted, actively blinding the host to reality by making a new one and placing the host in it, as its king, its ruler, or if the host is unwilling, the Lord as its regent. And now to talk about another complication to the Lord, because it really doesn't act like any of the other sins, if the previous examples haven't displayed that already. Mechanically and foundationally as a category, not even just its traumas or its abilities, it just functions different. Because while the Lord is still born from an emotion, its whole goal is to avoid it, not to further it. It's not that want of vengeance of a hound, it's going to pursue that vengeance, that emotion, that revenge. The hatred of a centipede, it is very hateful. The ogre is just as sorry as the host. The Lord is seeking to avoid that emotion of fear at all costs and will justify its actions. It isn't just acting on impulse. For this order, for this reality, for what it's doing, it justifies it to itself. It needs to. It's foundational. It needs to have a right and wrong, so it can banish the wrong from its realm. Because it's born of fear, it wants that comfort for itself as well, not just its host. It is deeply protective and obsessive of its host, wanting to protect them from all that ailed them. And it's not necessarily just a danger. It can be. It can be something terrible. It could be something physically tragic that could also result in a hound. But theoretically, a Lord can always manifest from nearly any of the other five. There are some specifics that will lean in one of the other five categories, but the Lord is just an escape from whatever caused that. All of these are born of trauma. If your result is fear of that and wanting to escape, a Lord can manifest. Because it's change. It's fear of change. It's fear of lacking control. And the Lord offers that. It is the authority that you can rely on, actually manifesting as that. Sometimes a literal physical authority, as like a police officer, a soldier, some king or something. Or a priest, an angel, a god. Something of authority that the host innately trusts, or pictures as correct and right. Or in some cases, just a trusted hound, just anything you can rely on, or the host thinks they can rely on. But tall armored knights, angelic figures, strange mystical creatures, or a hound, trusted family member, a perfect image of a celebrity you had in mind. These hosts are frightened. Things have changed, things have gone out of control, they've lost something. They fear losing more, and the Lord is offering them an answer. It's offering them protection, it's offering them escape. And where this want of escape comes from, the traumas. What did you lose? What is the main thing you would fix about the world? And what do you regret leaving behind when you ascended to the kingdom? Very broad. The general loss that aligns with all that manifests in the Lord, the key differences that would form in the realm, the kingdom of the Lord, and then finally, the one thing that the Lord cannot give them. The Lord steals them away to their kingdom. And at the center of that kingdom is their palace. In the case of the Lord, given its name, is a literal palace of some kind. Though it doesn't have to be literal. It's literal in the sense that it's the center of the kingdom, both literally and metaphorically. Just like a castle would be to the kingdom, the palace, or a capitol building, a strong fortress or bunker, a palatial estate, a mansion of some kind. But not in the super glamorous forms that a toad needing to fill its halls or an idol wanting to grandize themselves, a reflection of their own glory. The Lord's way more literal. It is to act as both a symbol of authority and to protect and comfort the host, to make them feel comfortable and safe, and also keeping them away from the exorcists when they eventually come. But it's not empty like the toads. No, it is bustling with the people and minor sins that the Lord has populated the space with. Or the imaginings of the host. It is bustling like the rest of its kingdom. This place is full of not true life, but the images that the Lord presents of life. Whether that be altered people or the minor sins splintered off of the Lord. But just as that position of authority and defense, the palace sits in the middle of its kingdom, which is the pressure of the Lord. Hard to dance around it until getting to this section, but the kingdom is the Lord. It's the layer action. The reality-altering process of the palace applies to the entire investigation area. Maybe not all of it yet, but that's the pressure. Is it building, it claiming? That is the clock you're up against, is the local area being taken and claimed by the Lord and becoming the kingdom. Which is alarming in two measures. One, everyone that's abducted into it and space just warping around it, or until the sin event occurs, but the other is that the Lord's abilities, all his domains, well, nearly all of them, only work in the kingdom. So early on with low pressure, you have some maneuverability around the investigation area. The later you get into the investigation, the less freedom you have to get away with things because the Lord can get to you, or has more control over you as its borders grow. But to how exactly this kingdom kind of borders on that reality, because it doesn't properly take it. It might do with a sin event. Instead, it crosses over at thresholds, that places within the mind that subconsciously you mark as a transition. A place where you move from one location to another, a doorway, a window, and particularly in some bad cases, a significant street of some kind, a marker of going down into another avenue or neighborhood. Anything that is a threshold. It could even just be a wardrobe with some kind of, I don't know, lion and witch in it. And while you are an exorcist and have the chance of perceiving these borders and these doorways, the regular mundane humans around the town that's currently being taken can't. When they walk through these barriers, when they open this door where you might be able to see the kingdom or where it transitions, the human will walk through and be claimed by the Lord. Another piece that they can change and alter to fit their host needs. And this isn't a panic, just in the same way that they can't detect it, and if they're ever freed of it, they don't remember it. Within the realm, they are not themselves. People who hate the host on the outside might grow to love them or adore them, or be left with that hate just so they can be tortured by the host. But just as it claims literal space, it will take anyone that steps into its kingdom. And you being exorcist, you still have the joy of being able to walk in and out at your own leisure. Well, without difficulties being stopped. With your sin seed, you're able to see these thresholds and also keep your own sanity, your own mentality, mostly, while within the kingdom. The only way that the Lord is actively stopping you is both with its traces and itself, just directly stopping you through physical violence, or its domain abilities. But your ticking clock is taking the people and the physical space of the investigation, so you better hurry. And to the traces of this kingdom of the Lord are the guards. Now the guards can't leave the realm. These traces of the Lord act as its own satellites where it can't be directly controlling it, keeping an eye out for anyone or any entity that would disrupt their host. And these also take the form of authority, but namely the ones dealing out or enforcing. So enforcers. Riot control, police, soldiers, knights if you're going back to the medieval, samurai even. But a particular oddity is cruel weaponry. They are here to punish. They are guards, yes, but they're not here to defend. They're here to stop anything from disrupting the kingdom, and to make you wary of disrupting the kingdom. Other than just being a combative obstacle, they also have outstanding senses to detect you, fantastic sight, hearing, taste. I don't know why taste came up, I meant to say smell, but you know, all senses. And one of their key abilities is to call reinforcements, either other guards or when you're in the kingdom, able to just call the Lord. Just alert the Lord to wherever you are in the kingdom. And the Lord as well, again, also manifesting not just as this authority figure, but also the ability to enforce weapons of some kind, and usually, like that knightly image, a massive sword. Though it could be holy flame, lightning, smites, which lines up with our severe attack, judgment. The Lord is going to stop you, chain you up, or lock you down in some manner and judge you. This one is quite literally questions. So all the other questions of the severe attacks are more just situational or what's going on in the head of the exorcist. The Lord could actually be questioning them, and the other exorcists wanting to aid or help in some manner, just stepping up and trying to argue on their behalf. So again, the severe attacks, 66. For every answer of yes on the questions, you remove one of the dice. For the questions, are you innocent of crimes? Are you a liar or a cheat? Which is very interesting that it wants you to say yes to this. I think it fits for the Lord, lying and cheating. Have you lived a life by your ideals? A very personal one that you might have other exorcists try to argue for you. And then the general one that isn't really a question, but is the Lord hindered, stopped, incapacitated in some manner? Can it not deliberately smite them? But that's what it does with judgment. It smites them, whether in holy fire, lightning, a particularly grisly blow, cannon fire, or electric chair. You end up taking one stress for every dice. Doesn't matter what it rolled. The allies that tried to help also take the same amount. That's not the devastating part of judgment, though. No. The devastating part of judgment is whenever you roll a 1. Because you have to remember this is a psychic entity judging another psychic entity, you. For every 1 that is rolled, the exorcist is forced to face their own inadequacy, and they gain 1d6 sin for each one rolled. You can only have a max of 10 before sin overflow. There's the initial judgment, which is the basic smite, the guaranteed stress based off each of the dice. But rolling those ones, you yourself, the exorcist, is looking in and hating it. They're judging themselves, their own physical form, this manifestation of humanity, and the sin grows, the imago grows. Not guaranteed, but if you're a worn down exorcist littered with sin marks, and you get judged, you could be immediately smote and become an imago. Instead of wiping away the stain, it's forcing you to stare at it. Your own. Moving on to the Lord's afflictions, reality control. Everything that enters the kingdom is under the Lord's control. That includes your own equipment. As for each kit point you spend, you also have to spend 1 stress, as it's your own psychic might trying to battle the Lord to make sure this object you did bring in with you and isn't just missing. Pain of loss. You share the pain of the Lord or the host. Whenever the Lord or the host takes pain, you are pained. Was just making sure that this hurts you just as much as it hurts them. Kingdom infection. Now this is a fun one. This isn't the Lord doing anything directly. This is almost the nature of the kingdom that want to cuddle, to protect, to comfort, infecting the exorcist with their own psychic powers. Every time the pressure increases, the exorcist marks off 1 KP to manifest something comforting to them. Personally, not to the Lord or the host. To them. You might have needed that kit points for some kind of weapon or healing items. It might have been those items, but now it's just a bear you haven't seen since you were picked up by CAIN. An image of a loved one you've forgotten. Manifests into something you think is them. Hitchhiker, you always count as in the kingdom for the Lord's powers, which is scary. Almost all of the Lord's domains rely on modifying and being within the kingdom. You now count as always in the kingdom. Welcome home, another bit of influence, another bit of strange psychic nature interacting with the kingdom. As a part of this affliction, this Lord has begun to comfort you. In your own psychic nature, having your psychic powers swell and have more control over the kingdom. You have an additional psyche burst to the max, and when you rest, you regain all of it. However, the catch is you can't use your psychic abilities outside of the kingdom. At all. Your twisting of reality is now tied up with the Lord. Adding to this issue of not being able to use your powers outside the kingdom, you gain a new agenda, neglect your responsibilities. Stay in the kingdom, use these powers for your own whims. Why do you need to work under CAIN? Do you see any of the humans working or running in here with you? And lastly, Justicar, permanently add to your agenda, punish wickedness. You will be judge, jury, and executioner, just like the Lord, removing everything that is evil from its world and kingdom. And you will remove the stains that CAIN ignores. You will remove the human ones. Now after the afflictions, we finally move on to the domains. These are the different powers and abilities the sin has that is other than just, it's a massive scary psychic creature. Each category has 8 different domains, and each sin manifestation has 3. These 3 are usually associated with the traumas, but they don't have to be. And a particular thing to keep track of, both as the admin running and as the exorcist fighting, a good chunk of these 8 domains rely on being in the kingdom, either the target or the Lord. With that, we move on to reality is at the Lord and the host's whims. Everything can suddenly change on a dime. The simplest one of these just being summoning things that are cap +1 in size. Or scope, you can summon different vehicles, objects. The stronger the Lord, the more dangerous that's going to be, because it's always 1 cat higher. This all usually has a threat or complication, but it can change gravity, it can change the weather, the biome you're in, the building you're standing on. All doors in this building suddenly stop existing. Its control of the kingdom is no longer a general influence, push, or pull. It is a fine-tooth comb of, if its attention is directed at you, it can change it. In the moment, time slowing down, space being curved, gravity flipping, throwing you up into the heavens. And in particular, when against exorcists or other psychic threats, it can stop any ongoing effect of theirs. So if another psychic entity is trying to manipulate its kingdom by using its psychic abilities, it can stop that. Still has a threat or tension, it's not default, but still. The Lord gets fancy with its battle tactics, so each of the different rounds during combat, it has to pick a different type of superiority, a different stance in the middle of combat: honorable fighting, grand melee, and duel. Each of these rules are the Lord in a particular fighting style, but doesn't actually buff the Lord. It debuffs the exorcists. Anyone fighting the Lord not following in the rules of each of these stances is significantly hindered. So with honorable fighting, if you're using teamwork or any kind of setup, you take 1d3 stress. That's not honorable. That's preparation. That's ganging up on him. Though in grand melee, if you don't use teamwork or setup, everything is hard. This is the group fight. This is attempting to take it down. It might also be using some of its own traces alongside it, if you want to keep it thematic to the Lord also following this kind of rule. And then duel, it picks 1 exorcist out of the entire group to fight it. What this means is that 1 exorcist that's set up to duel deals additional damage, but everyone else in the group is doing less. This is a duel that's just these 2 fighting. But now, if you want a fighty Lord, this is a good one. That's Knight. Congrats, you're Marty McFly, as the Lord is just attempting to erase you. A new affliction, banished. As when you're within the kingdom, the Lord has decided you do not belong here, you are something wrong, and instead of attacking you, the classical means of violence or its traces coming after you or trapping or kicking you out, it's just erasing you from existence. As you slowly become ethereal, you begin having difficulty interacting with anything within the world that can phase through walls and floors. You basically act like a ghost within the kingdom. However, every time the pressure of the kingdom increases, you take one stress, and if the stress would cause an injury, you instantly die as you're erased. And while it's an affliction, the domain doesn't restrict it to one exorcist at a time. Depending on how many times you apply that affliction, everyone could be potentially banished. And when it comes to the Lord in particular, not just the mechanics of it, this is a Lord who, instead of attacking or trying to mold or morph, when something is wrong in their kingdom, including other people, humans, that seemingly have some kind of resistance or don't quite fit within the image of the kingdom, they are simply erased. It isn't just changing reality, it is deleting it. There are a number of rules placed over the investigation in the kingdom. Some of the Lord's codes don't even need its direct intervention to enforce. Its mere presence and influence over the investigation area in the kingdom enforces it for them. And when an exorcist breaks them, they take a 2d3 stress each time. And with these rules in this list, it can be potentially a lot for the admin to keep track of. So there's an incentive for the other exorcists that if they basically rat out and say that the admin missed something, they gain an XP. This could be entirely an out-of-game thing, but I really like the idea that the Lord or the kingdom is rewarding the one exorcist that's like the student reminding the teacher of homework to those rules. You don't just make them up on the fly. You pick from a list 3 of them. First on that list, we have swearing. Just at all. Second, speaking the name of the Lord or the host, not in vain, just saying it. Uncovering skin between the ankles, wrists, and neck in view of the opposite sex. Drinking, eating, or smoking anything not blessed by the Lord. Touching another person skin to skin without consent of the Lord. And finally, entering the palace of the Lord without praying first. Some of those are more commonplace to bump into than others, but luckily anyone entering the kingdom for the first time instantly knows each of these rules. The ones that are selected. And when it comes to the damage side of this, you can only be hurt once per scene. So basically, you can keep breaking them throughout the investigation, and you're gonna take a lot of stress. But once you break one during a scene, it's not that bad. But it doesn't even need to be there anymore to try and enforce you. It doesn't need to bend reality directly or try to alter you directly. Its influence just hurts you when you don't follow what it wants. The host finds comfort in nostalgia, and the Lord complies, as everything within the kingdom is set to an interpretation of a previous period. So it's not the reality of that past or place, it's how the host perceives it and wants it to be. It doesn't even have to be a period that the host had lived through, or is even real, just a theoretical place in time that the host has a deep tie of nostalgia to. So much so that this domain nearly overrides everything else. Not mechanically, but in its influence. Everything is through this nostalgic lens, this regression, this obsession. So much so that even other psychic entities, such as your exorcists, are affected. So as the kingdom is set to some kind of perceived past and nostalgia, either, knights and castles, samurai in Japan, or even just the perceived rose-tinted version of 1950s Americana. And as you enter, you, and namely your equipment, change to fit the environment. While this namely affects your actual tactical equipment, so if you have some kind of firearm that's changing to like a flintlock or a crossbow, a satellite phone goes back to some kind of old-timey walkie-talkie, or if it's even further back, it just might not exist if there's not an equivalent. In any of these cases, if the object remains, the check might be hard with it. If it's a firearm and you go back to the Americana angle, for example, it might not change that much. Though funnily, you also get a costume change. I hope you didn't like your uniform or your hair, because all that's changing. All of this does revert when you leave the kingdom, everything changes back to normal, but when you're in there, your equipment could be useless or gone, and your CAIN uniform is removed. You fit into the regular citizens of the kingdom, as this false nostalgic lens tints the Void Sea. Oh man. The Lord and the host can just say no to something. Something that happened. It can reverse causality and just change the events to something else occurring. Now, it can't do this at a whim, it's only 3 times per hunt. And there's also a downside for the Lord using it against exorcists and other psychic entities. So as the Lord or the host changes causality, bending reality and warping it, space and time briefly become unstable, empowering any psychic entities. As the result of being the one targeted for the change in script, you gain an additional psyche burst as reality itself around you isn't quite right. And then you have a choice. You can attempt to re-roll, even with gaining that psyche burst, to try and still force your hand in the events, or you can willingly fail, letting the Lord or host win and gain an additional 1d3 psyche burst, taking the fall and consequences for whatever that roll actually was, but gaining that additional psychic power. You're giving into their whims, but they can't properly control you. Everyone has a role within the kingdom. Everyone drawn in, captured, and molded by the Lord and the host's desires. And that includes you. And now it's not just your equipment or your styling through that nostalgic lens. It's still that, but your mentality is changing. You are filling a role within the kingdom. Whenever pressure increases as the kingdom grows and presses down on the exorcists, they gain an affliction of whatever this role is. It's rolled on a d6, and they each have a new temporary agenda item for the mission when you're in the kingdom, and a set of forbidden acts that are always hard to perform. First, with Peasant, its new agenda: act in extreme deference to others. While this includes your other exorcists and is a funny bit, this also counts for all the other traces or anyone else you meet on the investigation or the Lord. Not mandatory, it's an agenda, but still. And your Forbidden is a lot more complicated. Acting in defiance of an order. This can also be from exorcists, NPCs, people in the investigation, and the Lord. If the Lord orders you, suddenly any action against that is hard. Because that is your Lord, you are a peasant. As a priest under the agenda, you have obey the Lord. Again, that's your Lord, just the, other L. What's forbidden is lying, cheating, and saying the Lord's name in vain. Next is the bandit, the rogue agent. With your agenda, steal something, and the forbidden, any kind of teamwork or setup. You're acting on your own, you're a rogue. Within the Lord's proper kingdom, bandits don't work together. Next is sage, you are knowledgeable, you are a scribe within the kingdom of some kind. With the agenda, demonstrate your erudition and knowledge. And the forbidden, any physically demanding activity. That's a list. Knight, you're a noble soldier, honorable, chivalric. In the name of the mother, your agenda is to protect any of the residents of the kingdom. And you're forbidden striking a woman, lying, cheating, and dirty fighting. Again, you're supposed to be the noble knight of the kingdom. And the last role is noble, with the agenda humiliate your inferiors. And the forbidden deferring to an inferior or dirtying your hands. That manual labor is not for you. And while the agenda and the forbidden acts are there, you can word this in different ways on how the domain is manifesting within the kingdom. Is it similar to the rule stricture, where all of a sudden you know this, like almost it's a script you've been given, a role to play, and if you play by the rules, nothing bad happens? Or is it something more insidious? Overriding. That sin seed in absence of this domain usually lets you resist a lot of the other effects of the domain that other humans seem to fall under. This one, however, is beginning to rewrite you, molding you to fit this role, molding you to fit in the kingdom, your place. There's another quite powerful minor sin running around the kingdom, because while there's also the traces acting as the general guards and enforcers and the Lord themselves can come and intervene, now you have this flaming sword going around, this guardian. And just like the other traces and a good chunk of the domains, it can't exist outside of the kingdom. However, when actually dealing with it, it is a paragon. It is a massive, statuesque paladin, flaming eyes, maw. It is not just the enforcer, it is the judging angel, the inquisitor paladin, the statue guardian, the divine fire that burns away wickedness. Whatever the shape it takes, it is heavily armored and immune to mundane weaponry, with its execution also being 3 plus the cat of the sin, which is a hefty chunk, especially because it can come back. It respawns at the palace. When the pressure increases, it just comes back. The Lord has to heal as pressure increases back in his palace. This just comes back to hunt you down, and it hunts you down when moving in its kingdom. It has a cat +2 speed. That's fast. That can be really fast. The moment it detects you, it is your nemesis. It is hunting you down. And its last bits, it is incapable of deceit or lying, so if you ask it any kind of question, it could stay silent, but it will just answer you. And it also always knows when someone is lying to it, so if you try to disguise yourself as other residents of the kingdom, or try to fit in your role and say that you're not going to hunt down the Lord, it knows. And it is coming to remove you. And that was the Lord, this god, this angel, this protector of its kingdom and coddling of its host. But while it's all about this control and conquest in its domains, it's because it's attempting to control. As a reminder, this is a sin born of fear. It is paranoia. It is scared just as its host. It doesn't just want to change the outside world, it's terrified of it. It's not wanting something, it wants to remove it. It is a bloody Prince Charming protecting their princess through murder and torture. Pieces of reality and people, gifts of land and serfs to their eventual queen. A vengeful angel shaping a statuesque Puritan flock and burning any sinner or witch that steps in the kingdom. A half-dead war hero dragged from trenches mixed with shrapnel, limbs, and poisonous gas to find that they never lost the war. Parents looking after their kid in a childhood that is long since past. These are the possible shapes of the Lord. It is fear, it is paranoia, it is terrified of the world, it is terrified of reality. It fears the stranger, is horrified of the future, and wants to eliminate change. And it will continue cutting away, taking, removing, editing until all that is left is its host and nothing else. Execute it. Thank you for watching the video on the Lord, the final sin of the core book, outside of, the manufactured ones, the main 6 categories. Also another bit to touch on that I failed to mention in the domains themselves. The stricture of narrative and the stricture of control work outside of the kingdom. Stricture of control, you learn of the rules you're meant to avoid when you enter the kingdom for the first time. It applies to the whole investigation area, which already means that's more of a danger just to keep track of, that additional source of stress. But the stricture of narrative, the altering of causality, just changing what happened, that doesn't just work in the kingdom. That works anywhere in the investigation area, anytime you're fighting the Lord, or dealing with the host. The host can do this as well. No, the Lord's a weird one, because again, it's all about coddling and comforting its host, but it is fear. It fears you, it's paranoid, and is that violent reaction of wanting to remove any of that, to ignore it, to blind itself. Well, namely to blind the host. And while that can be genuinely understandable, it's loss, any form of loss. It's all through the perspective of the host. Those kingdoms can turn pretty nasty. It's just whether that host would then produce one of the other sins or not. And that's not a hard thing in the book, that's more my interpretation of the Lord is like, yes, and if any of the main 3 traumas of a host line up with a particular sin in a particular moment more than the Lord or any of the others, then of course that sin manifests. The Lord isn't a default or the base slate. I just mean that in those bad situations that would spawn the others, loss is usually associated as an element. Toad and Ogre, you lost everything. Idol, you lost a loved one. Hound, you lost everything to someone. Centipede, you lost everything and just hate. What defines those other categories is particularly the moment of manifestation and the 3 specific traumas associated with the manifestation, that category. I only bring this up to say that you can have many different flavors of a Lord that can lean in any of those directions, or just be its own thing. It doesn't have to be just coddling, because most of its abilities are enforcement or violence. Don't forget about that. It comforts the host, not you. But anywho, once again, thank you for watching the video, a thank you to my patrons, and have a nice day.
I was to become a god. Creating a new world